George Conway. We're gonna get to all the testimony. One thing though that must be, and I know you're frustrated by it. Willie and I have discussed it. All of our friends have discussed how frustrated we are by people that we know, people that we love, people that we grew up with, friends of mine from my entire life, people I went to high school, college, church with, will sit there and they will just babble on and talk about conspiracy theories. Well, what about this? No. Well, what about that? The truth was laid out last night. And unfortunately, I would guess the overwhelming majority of those friends of mine, the overwhelming majority of people that I grew up in churches with that are spreading these conspiracy theories still, they weren't watching. If they were watching another channel, that channel refused to show the video. Or put another way, George, that channel refused to show the truth.
Well, that's absolutely right. But the truth has a way of seeping out there, and not every person who voted for Donald Trump gets their news entirely from Fox News. A lot of them do. And I think, you know, they did such an effective job last night of laying it out and laying out that this wasn't just about the violence on January 6th. And as Mike said, this was a masterful prosecutorial presentation by Representative Cheney. It was brilliantly done. And what it did was it tied together all the various strands of what Donald Trump caused and what he did, and his criminal intent. His intent, the criminal intent established by people who worked for him, for people who were loyal to him, such as Bill Barr, Miller, Ivanka, and people who worked for the vice president. It was compelling. It was chilling. The videos were chilling, and I think it's going to be historic. And I think we often forget, though, it's not just the audience out there of people who turn on Fox News and turn it off and don't read the newspaper and don't actually expose themselves to things they disagree with. There's an audience at 9th and Pennsylvania that wants to know, or ought to want to know, is this a triable criminal case? And I'm hoping that audience was watching very closely. And I think if they watch what happened last night, and if the hearings are continually as high quality as was what we saw last night, they're going to conclude, yeah, this is a triable case.
Well, the committee presented evidence showing those closest to Donald Trump did not believe the big lie that the election was stolen, as George was discussing there. Not his campaign lawyers, not his campaign data people, not his daughter and senior White House aide Ivanka Trump, not his attorney general, who in a deposition used some blunt language in his assessment. And we warn you, we didn't bleep the curse word.
I made it clear I did not agree with the idea of saying the election was stolen and putting out this stuff, which I told the president was bullshit. And, you know, I didn't want to be a part of it, and that's one of the reasons that went into me deciding to leave when I did. I observed, I think it was on December 1st, that, you know, you can't live in a world where the incumbent administration stays in power based on its view, unsupported by specific evidence, that there was fraud in the election.
How did that affect your perspective about the election when Attorney General Barr made that statement?
It affected my perspective. I respect Attorney General Barr. So I accepted what he was saying.
I was in the Oval Office, and at some point in the conversation, Matt Oskowski, who is the lead data person, was brought on. And I remember he delivered to the president pretty blunt terms that he was going to lose.
And that was based, Mr. Miller, on Matt and the data team's assessment of the sort of county by county, state by state results as reported?
Correct.
I remember a call with Mr. Meadows, where Mr. Meadows was asking me what I was finding and if I was finding anything. And I remember sharing with him that we weren't finding anything that would be sufficient to change the results in any of the key states.
When was that conversation?
probably in November, mid to late November. I think it was before my child was born.
And what was Mr. Meadows' reaction to that information?
I believe the words he used were, "So there's no there."